Have a seat on your porcelain throne. It's time to talk some shit on the Powell Movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and I'm happy to say that my Angapalooza events went off spectacularly. Over 3 days, we had 3 different events. Friday night was a chill marchetti spaghetti dinner on Alki Beach. It was the calm before the storm where friends and close family could get to know each other. For me, it was cool, but when you're in a room with pictures of your dead wife everywhere, tears could start flowing at any minute, and that was pretty much how the weekend went for me. So we had that great dinner on Friday, and then Saturday night was going to be the big party, and on Friday, I let some of the girls know that Angaroki, which was what Saturday night was all about, it was karaoke to Anja's favorite songs, that was going to start at 9 p.m. And the girls were like, what? We're going to be ready to party at 7. And that was strange to me, as when doors open at 7, people usually show at 9, but not for Ange. By 7:30, we had 100 people in the bar, and at 1:30 a.m. when I left, there were still at least 100 people in the bar. People were partying their faces off. The only problem with that night was that some idiot walked out of the bar with a full beer. And that's a total no-no in the bar world, and the staff was totally pissed off for a minute. The good thing was, that total idiot was me. And while they weren't happy to see me with a beer in my hand, they took it from me, and when they realized I was the widower, they let it slide a little bit. And really, that only happened because I was in rare form and it was a really rough day. Like I said, I was looking around and seeing pictures of Ange everywhere, but I would never really see Ange in my life again. So that's just a hard pill to swallow when you're out there, and I wasn't taking any pills or anything like that. I don't do that kind of stuff. But either way, Sunday was the big celebration of life. And going into this one, I was really worried about parking and my shuttle system. But everything worked out. And I'll say that I've thrown a ton of events in my life, and none have gone this smoothly. Everything worked out exactly as planned. And in the crowd for this one, there were like 7 different circles of Ange's life there. She had so many friends, and every group had the same thing to say about her. How she lit up every room she went into, how she was the life of the party and the funniest person everyone knew. But for me, the coolest part of all of this wasn't just hearing all that from everyone, because I know that. I live with her. That's why I married her. But it was hearing Keaton afterwards just talk about how many cool people were at the event. He was like, wow, Mom had so many cool friends. And most kids think their parents aren't cool. And Keaton doesn't think I'm cool most of the time. He didn't think Ange was cool most of the time. But really, when he was able to see this celebration of life, it really showed Keaton how cool his mom was. And he realized that, and he said something to me about that. And I don't know, that was awesome to me. So thank you for everyone for coming out and making the weekend so special. Thank you to Sophia Schmees and Caitlin Wade for all the help with everything. We fucking killed it. And also thank you to Stanley. They were kind enough to give everyone a pint glass with Ange's handwriting engraved in them. It was such a special thing that we all have, and it was such a cool piece. What's not cool is knowing that that will be the last time a group of that gets together to celebrate Ange. I'm going to miss her so much. And I mean, I've spent every day this summer thinking about her, planning her parties, and being so upset about all of this. And while I'm still upset, and I'm going to be upset for a long time, now life has to start for me again. So while I've been keeping myself so busy this summer with being on the mic for 2 live events, planning 3 parties, working 2 jobs, tying up all the loose ends with Ange's life, and managing Keaton's life and mine, everything now is going to slow down. I'm only going to have 2 jobs to work and Keaton. I'm going to be bored, I'm going to be lonely, and I'm going to need to do something to keep my sanity, and I don't know what that is yet. I do know that one thing that can help me forget for a little while is a good football game. And holy shit, football season is finally back, right when I need it. And to kick off football season, I figured the best podcast I could have would be with a 3-time Super Bowl champion who's also a snowboarder. I'm talking about New England Patriot Lonie Paxton. He's my guest this week, and we talk football, snowboarding, the High Fives Foundation, and more. Before we get into it, I want to ask you to tell a friend about the show. If you like it, your friends most likely will too. And since I'm not a pro athlete with a built-in audience, telling a friend really does help the show grow, so thank you for doing that. Thank you for listening, and please support my incredible sponsors who make this podcast happen. They are Elan Skis, Stanley, Best Day Brewing, Outdoor Research, and Liquid Force. Now, let's talk to 3-time Super Bowl champion and High Fives Foundation board member, Lonie Paxton.
Yeah, just chilling. It's a little overcast here in San Diego. Not much going on today other than when my kids get done with school. We got about 8 sports. So I'm kind of the calm before the storm here.
Gotcha. How many kids do you have?
4.
Oh, man. Man, my parents had 4 as well. It's got to be so much stuff.
Yeah, it is. They all play multiple sports. They, all have big friend groups, and we're busy all the time.
And they're playing sports. We're going to talk about sports with you, but you grew up in Southern California as well, and there's an action sports component to your life. And with your kids, are they all team sports guys, or do they get on skateboards and surf and do that stuff too?
They all surf a bit. That's about it. I mean, ride a couple BMX bikes here and there, but nothing crazy. I would say they spend a lot of time in the water. I grew up in Corona and Riverside, where it was a big BMX and dirt bike communities.
And so with this podcast, we're going to talk about football. We're not really going to talk about playing football, but it's a snow-focused show, and we're going to talk about snow because you have that in your blood. But you've been to 4 Super Bowls, you've won 3, you've lost 1. And when you win at that level, how sick is the after party? Are there like crazy bands, every celebrity, and everything you could possibly imagine?
I mean, our first one that we won, honestly, in New Orleans, Snoop showed up into the lobby, and that's about it. I don't think they expected us to win. We were playing the Rams, and we weren't given much of a chance, and we ended up winning. So we didn't have much of a party planned. But the next 2, yeah, we had Snoop perform, Kid Rock perform, Aerosmith. Lionel Richie was there doing his thing. And it's before social media and anyone had camera phones. So it was a pretty cool, intimate event.
Yeah, I guess you could just totally send it and you didn't have to worry about anything, right?
Yeah, nothing.
And that's when in that league and you have all those personalities and you have a lot of security, and it's hard to sweep stuff under the rug these days, although I'm sure it still happens. But back then, everything was swept under the rug, I would think. Like you could get away with anything.
Well, I mean, to an extent, nothing like criminal or anything, especially in that kind of scenario. They want everyone to be safe and have a good time, and they know people are going to send it. So, it's like within reason.
Gotcha. And while those celebrations have to be unreal, can you describe the feeling of loss when you lose a Super Bowl? I mean, is it tears and it follows you for the whole next year?
It still follows me today, buddy.
Do you think more about the loss than you think about the wins?
I do. I typically do.
Oh.
Yeah, because our loss, it would have been one of the greatest of all time. We would have been 19-0, undefeated, and really capped off the last undefeated season since the 70s.
Yeah, man, all those Miami Dolphins fans would have been like shitting their pants, but they're shitting their pants because you lost. And they're like, yes, you're still the undefeated team at like 13 wins. Well, who cares? But that's enough about that stuff and winning and losing Super Bowls. You grew up in Southern California. You're born Leonidas Earl Paxton. Have you always gone by Lonnie?
Yeah, always gone by Lonnie. And I'm the 18th, so the name Leonidas has been passed down from generation to generation. So my dad was 17th, my son's the 19th. And for whatever reason, they switched the first 5 letters to being called Lonnie. And that's what I go by.
Wow. So that's like some serious bloodlines. I was reading that like 300th the movie, like that's the dude.
I think that's where it started. Obviously not like in that with King Leonidas, but it goes back pretty far. And, it's just cool to see that it's hung around so long. That's the idea.
Yeah. So you're a kid with that name, which is a weird name for a kid, Leonidas, but they call you Lonnie, so that doesn't matter. But you're one of many kids, it seems like. You have 3 boys in your family, and you're like the oldest one. But then there's also 3 foster kids in your house as well. Are your parents together? Is it like one big happy family?
Yeah, I mean, my parents are still together to this day. We adopted my little sister, who, that would be 4 kids in the house. But through the adoption process, we were having to foster to kind of, show, child services that, we were prepared to take on an adoption and had a proper household and loving household to do so. So through the adoption process, we were fostering 3 kids, for 6 months, and then a couple kids for 6 months, and then 1 kid for a year. And so we were just kind of, the foster house that they knew they could send kids to. And we also had an exchange student from Russia around the same time. And 2 of my cousins, when my aunt got into a bad car accident, they lived with us for 3 or 4 months. So.
Man, and so you do a lot of good stuff with your life these days. I mean, you're like nonprofits and you help out a lot. And is that because your parents were such good people and taught you kind of that stuff early of like just giving a hand to people?
I think it was instilled in me from the beginning. My parents used to go above and beyond and just be, an open house for people, for animals. we used to do these little kind of gift bags and give meals away around the holidays and gifts, like a present bag to some of the underprivileged families in our area. And, they worked odd hours. My mom was a sheriff's dispatcher. My dad was construction, and then kind of left construction to go work for the sheriff's department as well. And so, a lot of times it was just me and the kids at home because they were working graveyard shifts or whatever. And so, we worked together to do it, and it worked out.
Well, that's pretty cool. And then the one thing that you guys were able to do, or I think your dad was a huge Rams fan and he got you into that as well. Did you guys all go to Rams games together?
Well, we only had 2 season tickets, so it was either my mom or me or my middle brother that really got to benefit from it. My dad canceled the tickets when my youngest brother was old enough to go. I think he might have went a few times, but it's primarily either me or my mom, and always had a love for the Rams, and it was at Anaheim Stadium, which was about half hour from our house.
You could see Eric Dickerson play and stuff like that?
Eric Dickerson, Kevin Green, Jackie Slater, Jim Everett. There was a lot of players from that era. They were my heroes.
Vince Ferragamo was then too, right?
Ferragamo, yeah, Henry Ellard.
Yeah, I remember all those dudes, yeah.
Flipper Anderson. There was a lot of guys.
So that's cool, but also where you grow up, there's, like you said, a BMX and a moto kind of like lifestyle that's all built around where you're growing up. Were you involved in any of that BMX, skateboarding, or any of that as a kid? Or were you just like the big kid that would break all the shit?
Well, a little bit of both. I had a BMX bike and raced down in Lake Paris for a few years. Some of the kids I played baseball with, one of their dads was a world champion circle track racer on moto. And so his son, before he got into moto, was a BMX racer, had the really light elf bikes, or I forget what they were called. And my dad just, I got off the shelf, Santa Claus bike and was entering some of these races and doing pretty good. And I ended up getting my bike stolen, and my parents couldn't, afford to just keep buying me stuff. So, it was pick up the football that was laying on the ground or basketball and go play sports with your friends. And so my kind of action sports love never went away, but the equipment that was needed to, take part in it was few and far between. So I just started, especially with my love of football, I just started kind of playing, team sports, but always had a finger on the pulse or a group of friends that were racing moto or BMX or a bunch of skaters around Corona and the lowrider scene. It was just kind of a scene.
So would it be fair to say like you knew all the jocks too, but you knew all the dirtbag moto, skateboard, and whatever guys too, and your friends to everyone?
I kind of teetered through the locker room to the dirt tracks and, was watching Crusty Demons of Dirt videos when they come out and doing stupid shit with my friends in high school, and then go to the weight room and train and talk about what we did. So.
Yeah, and I would think that in high school, like you're the kind of kid that makes high school coaches just salivate like this big giant kid. But I was read somewhere too where you started out playing quarterback. Is that true?
Yeah, well, I was too big to play tackle football when I was younger. So I started off playing baseball, basketball, and flag. And in flag, I could throw really well because I was a pitcher playing baseball. So I could just chuck the ball down the field. So it was, easy for me to hit the receivers. And so when I got to freshman football, my first year of tackle, it's like, hey, what does everyone play? And I raised my hand. I'm like, I'm quarterback. They looked at me like, really? Okay. So I got starting job at quarterback and survived a couple games until I dove on a fumble and broke our center's ankle. And that same game, they moved me to center.
Then you're probably a fixture on the line there. I mean, were you a giant in high school compared to everybody else?
No, not at all. Average. I've always been somewhat average.
Like what size when you were at your biggest in the NFL? I mean, I guess you're a specialty long snapper. You don't have to be a giant. I guess these days less because there's a lot of rules to protect your position. But how big were you at your biggest?
Well, I was bigger in college than I was in the NFL. So in college, I was 6'2", 280, 285, somewhat like of a average sized lineman, I would say. I played guard and center. So I was kind of on the bigger end for long snapping because I was an offensive lineman. And so when I got to the league, Belichick said, basically I don't need to carry all that weight. So he gave me a weight target. And so I was always trying to stay under my weight target, obviously, so I didn't get fined. So that was the weight I had most of my career.
Okay. And then back to high school is when I think you start specializing as a long snapper, but I don't know if you specialize as it. Is it just something that you can do? So they're like, Paxton, you're the long snapper, and that's that?
Well, because I used to go to all these Ram games with my dad. Our seats were right in front of the kickers, long snappers, cheerleaders, And we'd go in early and just watch all these guys warm up in pregame. And I always loved kind of seeing what these guys do, when not a lot of people are watching, and what their routines were. And I was just always intrigued by how the long snapper could throw missiles upside down between his legs. I just thought it was really cool. And so it was never something that was like, oh, that's what I want to be when I grow up. It was just like, oh, that's actually pretty badass. And so I'd go home, I'd mess around with it. And then, in flag football, they don't have that position. So when I got to tackle football, it's like, okay, who can play quarterback, who can play kicker, who can punt, who can long snap? And I was like, oh, I think I could do that. And I raised my hand. And because I could throw so well, I just applied it to throwing upside down between my legs. And once I figured out that you get actually more velocity, spin, and accuracy using two hands versus one, I just started to improve at it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a full-on skill. It's not like any center can be a long snapper. You actually have to have a skill and be able to actually throw the ball well.
I think the prerequisite is just being able to throw really good. Just having a good arm, because you're really applying that to long snapping.
So if a quarterback wanted to practice long snapping, would they most likely be pretty good at that skill?
They might be, but they're accustomed to using one hand. So you really have to practice how to spin it and get it to go accurate 45 feet every time, or 8 yards back to a holder with two hands, because one hand doesn't work.
It's time for my first sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Liquid Force. And not only are they back supporting the podcast, but this summer, they're bringing back the most important party and event in wakeboarding. That's right, Brostock is back, and the contest features the best riders in the world. But you know what's more fun than watching the pros ride? Riding with them. And you can ride with the Liquid Force pros like Daniel Grant, Claudia Pagini, and Gunther Oka at a local lake or cable park near you at their Ride with the Pro Tour. And while Liquid Force is doing all these great things to build community on the water, they're also on the forefront of product innovation. And if you're a foil frother, you're going to want to check out the new FuseLock foil system. Wake surfers are going to love the all-new Ace and Synchro offerings. And the 2025 line features fresh boards, rad graphics, and more comp vest colorways than ever before. Park to boat to foil, Liquid Force has gear for every rider type, whether it's boat, cable, foil, or surf. To find out more about the events and the products, head on over to liquidforce.com. And when you see something you like, put it in your cart, and when you check out, enter the code POWELL15, that's all caps with no spaces, and you will save 15% off your order. Liquid Force, feel the pull. Next up, it's Elan Skis. And Elan doesn't need to support this podcast in the summertime. I've said that every summer. But they do it because they understand the importance of cultivating the stories that make the snow industry what it is. But if you haven't noticed, while they've always been big in Europe, Elan has built a growing cult following here in the States. It all started with the still thriving ripstick revolution that made skiing easier and more fun for anyone that tried them. That same idea, easier and more fun, is what they delivered to their Playmaker series of twin tips. How does Elan deliver a better ski experience? Well, it's all about using the best materials known to man. And that's no joke. This is the same Elan that's known for building award-winning luxury yachts. So they never cut corners. And the fit and finish is better than anything else on the ski wall. Seriously, if you pick one up and you look at the edges and you see those seams of glue on all the different skis, look at Elan's and you're going to see a seamless pairing, because they do take that additional time to pay that attention to detail, and it's awesome. And it makes everyone feel like they're making pro-level turns. And that's what skiing is all about, that feeling. So remember, before you buy your next pair of skis, demo a pair of Elan's, or just head on over to elanskis.com, pick a pair, and elevate your skiing experience. My final sponsor this round is Best Day Brewing. And while I love the taste of a good beer, I don't always need the alcohol. I mean, my life revolves around driving my kid places, running errands, interviewing people, managing my family, and all of these things I do better when I don't have a head full of alcohol. That's where Best Day comes in. These days, if I'm not partying, I'm still having beers, and those beers are from the award-winning Best Day Brewery. And there are a lot of NA beers out there right now, but none taste as good as Best Day. I love the hazy IPA, the Kolsch that you can get on all Alaska airline flights, and everyone seems to like the Electro Lime Cerveza. I could go on and on as they have so many flavors, and I love them all. The beauty of Best Day is that they average about 60 calories and they won't get you in trouble. And pro tip, if you're partying, try to mix in a Best Day for every alcoholic beverage you have, and it will extend your night. It does it for me, and it keeps me from doing anything stupid. To have your best day or night ever, head on over to bestdaybrewing.com. If you make that order over $50, we'll also throw in free shipping. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. One more question about being a long snapper. When you make it to the big leagues, are you looked at as a football player or as a kicker, punter, specialty guy, or how do you fit into the whole mix?
Well, there's a little bit of both. You're obviously practicing with the punter and kicker, and you kind of get looked at during practice of, okay, they don't do anything. What do they do all practice? But we hone in on our craft. That's what we do. But I wore a 60s number. So in high school and college, I was 70s or 73, but that number wasn't available because John Hanna, Hall of Famer for the Patriots, had 73. So they gave me a 60s number. So I was 66. And so my locker was with the linemen. And I'm a bigger dude. I have lineman tendencies, like to eat too much and drink too much and, probably stink, make weird noises and all these things. And because of my offensive line background, those guys kind of took me into their world. And so I'm an America's guest in there. So I hang out with the quarterbacks because we work out in the mornings together with the kickers, punters, quarterbacks. I wear a 60s number, so I'm with the linemen, especially on field goal. We're kicking for points. But then, on punt team, I'm playing with a lot of defensive guys and tight ends and running backs. And so I'm kind of part of that crew too.
Okay, so that's kind of how you are with your whole life. I've heard you describe yourself as like a Swiss Army knife, and it sounds like you're like that in the locker room. You can hang with anybody. But we're going to go back to college. You go to Sacramento State. And is it one of those places? I mean, I think that's where you get into snowboarding. And how does that all start for you? Because I don't think it started as a kid, but I'm not sure.
Well, actually, for Christmas one year, my girlfriend's dad bought me a snowboard. I think I was 15 or 16. And I was stoked that I got a snowboard, but I didn't have any money to actually buy a lift ticket or a car to get me there or, to buy gear and all these things. So my snowboarding, in high school was probably, less than 10 times.
Okay.
Just shooting up to Mountain High or Big Bear where I grew up and, going half day, clipping tickets, getting someone in the parking lot to give you their ticket because they're leaving early and do the whole hair dryer to unstick it and, that whole thing. So that was kind of my experience and using, 2 different gloves and size pants that don't fit, wearing sunglasses, not goggles. Yeah. So when I got to Sac State, we were about a half hour from Tahoe and my scholarship check would come every quarter or every semester. And I would say my last 3 years, not my freshman year, but my sophomore, junior, senior year, I would buy a season pass at Sierra Tahoe that at that time was $250. And every time you would make a lap, you'd get vertical feet to this account that would equate to points to where you could buy food. So I would go shoot up half day and do enough runs to feed me and take a to-go hamburger so I would drive home and so I'd have food for the evening.
Oh, that is amazing. So snowboarding is what fed you, and I guess it fed your mind as well. But I mean, football season would end and it was just like you wait a month and then snowboarding would start and you'd go as much as you could?
Yeah, I mean, football season would end. I'd go home for Thanksgiving, come back, finish up some classes. Then you'd have Christmas kind of break. And then come January, February, March, April, that's when we'd really charge the mountain a bunch.
And then just thinking about you being a snowboarder, being bigger than the average snowboarder, is it hard for you to get the right gear? And were you breaking bindings and all kinds of stuff, especially back in the day?
No, I wasn't breaking bindings. I did struggle to find I was using my first board was like a 52. It wasn't set up for me. Boots always hurt, because I'm a size 13 shoe. So then I kind of transitioned to these Burton Custom X with a wide stance. And so that would help my toes not drag, heels not drag. So I would have much more success. I even went so far to get like a 168 Burton Canyon wide. And, I've found that one's a little too big for me. So I've found this kind of happy space of about a 158 that works pretty good.
Nice. And while I was doing my research, I went onto the GoPro site. And there was something where they were talking about that you were talking to Red Bull at that point too. And what does that mean you're talking to Red Bull? Are you talking to them about being a sponsored athlete? Or is it more about you being like a campus rep at Sacramento State? Or is it you just being a go-getter and wanting to land a position with Red Bull out of school?
Well, it started at Sac State. I had this really wiry offensive line coach, Angus McClure, who used to come in just fired up all the time. And, we're just dead from practice and class. And he'd come in, like he'd have 100 cups of coffee. And we're like, Angus, what are you doing? What are you drinking? And he's like, oh, there's these new things. This is like 1998. It's like, oh, these new things, I buy them at the liquor store. It's the Red Bulls. They're crazy. You see those little cars driving around? It's like, that's the can I drink. And then he met a few people at Red Bull because he liked the brand so much. And then, I was like, I wonder if I could get a job there. I didn't think football was going to pan out. So I was just like, I bet I could do that. I like drinking this stuff. I like the events they have. And then when I made the league, I called him, my coach. I said, hey, you think that Red Bull guy, I see Red Bulls out here. Do you think that Red Bull guy in California knows anyone out in Boston? And they made a contact for me, and they would give me a case, but I had to drive out like a half hour away from my house to go pick up one case at this guy's doorstep and bring it back and have Red Bull. Then I bring it into the locker room and everyone would steal my Red Bulls. I was like, shit, well, hey, can I get 2 cases next time? Okay, 2 cases. And then we won a Super Bowl. And then now Red Bull's like, hey, how much product do you want me to send you? So you want to go to this event? You want to go to that event? And so now I'm getting, 10, 15, 20 cases brought to the stadium, paying one of the ball boys to bring them in. Red Bull sent me a refrigerator, so I got a Red Bull fridge in my locker. They're stocking it with Red Bulls. I got stickers from all the brands that support me, from Southern California. And I'm just kind of this, I don't know, I guess I'm pseudo ambassador, pseudo marketing for them in the locker room. And so then they were hosting events around Boston. I was like, who the hell do I got to meet at Red Bull so I can just keep getting more free Red Bull? And they're like, that's our vice president. And so I went up to him. He's like a 6'7" dude, Paul Crandall, who knows Roy really well.
He's been on the podcast, yeah.
Yeah, they call him LP. So I met him in like 2002, and I had my Super Bowl ring on from the first year, and he's a Raider fan, so he like takes my ring, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna take your legs out. You don't give me that thing back. and we started wrestling in the bar, and from ever since then we were great friends. And he kind of sold me into the Red Bull brand as a great friend of the brand. They were, giving me ambassador hats that they only give to athletes.
That's what I was going to ask, if you were able to wear a hat. So you got to wear the hats.
I got a couple dozen of them still to this day. They don't fit me anymore, but I hung on to them because they were just so cool. And so I was wearing them to events, and they were flying me to X Games, and I was speaking at a couple of their corporate retreats. And so before Reggie Bush, before Devin Hester, before Blake Griffin, before all these guys became like official Red Bull athletes, I was kind of this first team sports ambassador for them.
Oh, that's so cool. And I mean, you were just doing it because you wanted to have a cool job out of college, because you didn't think you were going to go to the NFL, because you're not a huge name in college football. It's not like you're looking at the draft board and Mel Kiper's like, we got to get Lonie Paxton in the 4th round. It's not happening for you. So like on draft day, do you have a big draft party or anything like that? Or is it more like, I wonder if there's a chance for me to even try out for a team? Or how does that even happen?
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that you go through this process, and I tell a story all the time that I didn't have a cell phone. So I'd be up snowboarding in February. I'm up snowboarding. I get home, and we took about, 15 runs that day. So I'm dead tired. I check on my answer machine, and my head coach and my football team's like, hey, Lonnie, we got a workout tomorrow. We got a couple scouts coming. I need you to bring your football and be here at 8 a.m. And I was like, shit, good thing I answered my answer machine. So I show up, and, I do the weights, I do the running, I do all these things. And, there was Steve Mariucci from the 49ers, Mike Tice from the Vikings. Like, there was some head coaches there and some scouts. And I was about to walk off the field, and my coach was like, hey, show them how you can long snap. Just where's your ball? Go get your ball and show them how you snap. So me and my buddy, who was one of my best friends in college, we always played this game. We're out kind of drinking at barbecues and hit that stop sign from 20 yards, or hit those beer bottles off the table from 10 yards. And we'd always just play these little like aim games, for little side bets.
Yep.
And he became my lucky charm. So he was also trying for a spot. John Osterhout's his name. And so after we'd finished the workout, they'd ask me to snap, and he'd say, hey, give me 3 to the left, give me 3 to the right. I'll give you 6 down the middle. And I'd hit every time, with good times and good speed. And the agents or the scouts come up and said, hey, how do I get a hold of your agent? I was like, I don't even have a fucking agent. I don't know how to get one. Like, do you know how to get one? And so that's how that process started for me. And I just signed the first guy who could review a contract. And it turned out to be, he was a real estate agent, not an actual player's agent. So he helped me sign my first contract to get signed. And, on that day, I knew I wasn't going to get drafted. There was another snapper for the 49ers that ended up getting drafted, like in the 6th round, Brian Jennings, who I still keep in contact today. But, after the seventh round was over, they just start making phone calls and calling all these free agents. And I had some family up there and we were just barbecuing, having a good time. I didn't expect anything to happen. And all of a sudden, 2 hours goes by and I get a phone call and, it was the Patriots. So I'm never going to pass up an opportunity to look for a better one. So I just took the first person who called and I said, yep, I'm in. And it was the Patriots.
And how does that work? It's like, so they offer you a job pretty much, or the opportunity to compete for a job. Is it like, hey, okay, be here in Boston at this place at 9 a.m. and everything starts?
Yeah. I mean, the scout says, hey, we'd like to sign you to a free agent contract. We'll fax over the contract, sign it, get it back to us. And then this person will call you and they'll book your flights. And then, this is the day you're leaving. And then in the mail, you get a t-shirt and a hat and a pair of shorts. And it's like, hey, good luck. I, yeah, this isn't the fancy, NFL draft where people are flying out of their seats to give you stuff and to pay you money and to, get these huge signing bonuses. My signing bonus was a t-shirt and a plane ticket.
That's funny, man. And then you get there and you're probably there a little early, I guess, because you're a rookie or whatever. But when everyone comes into camp, it's got to be surreal with like Brady and Brewski. And you're like this dude from Sacramento State who's going to try to make it as a long snapper.
Well, I mean, Brady was in the same rookie class. So we were on the same plane heading there together.
Oh,
Had
wow.
the same questioning about like, is this real? And oh my God, can I do this? And I remember the first night, we flew into Providence and then we go into the old Foxborough Stadium and we have like our rookie kind of introduction meeting and Belichick basically already starts cussing us out. And then we go to our individual, coaches. So mine was the special teams coach and I'm there with another rookie long snapper and I was in jeans and flip flops and he takes out a ball and he's like, hey, I want to see you guys long snap here. And so we're in the locker room basically having an audition for long snapping right off the plane in flip flops and jeans. And it just started literally as soon as you walk through the door.
And it's gotta be so awkward. Like it's you and that other dude, and there's probably like another veteran there. And they're probably going to keep one long snapper. I don't think they keep 3 or 4 long snappers on the team.
No. It's only one per team.
Yep. So they have one guy. So it's like you're looking at these 3 dudes and it's like, you might be cool with them, but at the end of the day, you want their job and they want your job. And it's like, it's got to be cutthroat, but not really at the same time.
Yeah, there was 4 guys actually. So 2 guys were veterans who were just trying to hang on. One was coming off an injury. One was just trying to add value and do other things. He was a tight end. And then there was me and another rookie. And at that time in the NFL in 2000, long snapping was just starting to make its transition into a specialized position. So there was probably 20 long snappers in the league that were strictly long snappers. And I'd say there was another 12 that were also playing other positions. So they were tight ends, D linemen, O linemen. Some guys were doing it one-handed, like, guys who played in the 90s and even late 80s that were just, that's how it used to be.
And I'd mentioned protections earlier, but people could absolutely destroy you when you were a long snapper and when you started, right?
I mean, they would tee off on us because we're the most vulnerable position on the line at that point. We got our head between our legs and we're obviously focused on the snap. So as soon as that ball moves, it doesn't even have to be out of your hand. As soon as it moves, these guys are kicking you in the head, putting elbows in your back and piling up on top of you with 3 or 4 guys.
Is there anyone who was more dirty than anybody else that you played with, or is it not even worth mentioning?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say dirty. They tee off on you. So, it's easy. It's almost like, because typically you're kicking after a score for an extra point, or you just got stuffed on a drive. And so the defense is all riled up and then you're kicking for 3. So that's on the, the point side. And then punt is they stuff you. And so they're all fired up and then they're trying to come at you to block the punt because they don't want to pin you down. So on both situations, the fastest way to the ball is right down the middle, which is over my head, over my neck. So, I actually didn't mind guys lining up on me a lot of times because I knew where they were. Because if they were to my left or right now, they have an ear hole shot and they just get to tee off on you. So if they're over me, then I kind of know how to brace myself.
Okay, and you end up making the team, and we don't really need to talk about that because we're not going to talk that much about football, even though we're all talking about football. But you make the team, you're able to buy a compound in Corona where you grow up, and I think while you're out on the road doing your NFL shit, some of your dirt bike buddies start building a backyard full of jumps. Like, how did that all come together? Because you have one of the biggest compounds in the bike world, but you're an NFL football player.
Yeah, so first couple of years, I didn't have a place. I just rented out in Boston and I'd come stay with my parents or friends when I came home. I ended up finding a place in Riverside out near Lake Matthews. that had 3 acres and a nice house on it. And it was just empty land. So it was just all dirt with the house on it. So, of course, I want to put a pool in, do some landscaping. I ended up picking the worst pool guy in the world who screwed me. He took me to a few houses and said, "Hey, these guys are on MTV Cribs, and this is the work I do, and this is what we can do for you, and da 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 da. It's going to be this much money." And it turns out those weren't even his jobs, and he was a scam artist from the beginning. So he took 75-80% of my money that I had in budget for the pool, and he left the country. He ended up getting caught in Mexico, stole an ATM, and did prison time. So now I'm forced to go find people to fix what he screwed up, like actually finish the job. And so it turns out that it was hundreds of thousands of dollars more than I had to finish the job. And it was this whole nightmare of this, almost 2-year process to finish this thing. It ended up being one of the coolest pools and compounds ever, but the process to get it there was not fun. And at this very same time, I tore my ACL, so I had to do rehab in Boston. I was limited from coming back and forth to the house for a time. But in high school, I made really good friends with a guy named Heath Pinner, who he was deep in the BMX industry. He was really good friends with Carey Hart. And so he kind of sat in this kind of team manager side for Rockstar, but also was an athlete himself and just had a lot of connections. And so Carey Hart and myself ended up going into business together at a place at the Hard Rock in Vegas. So we got pretty tight. And then Heath, knowing that I had all this empty land in my house, was like, "Hey, we're looking for a place to, put some jumps. I got Rockstar going to rent us some tractors. I'll pay the water bill every month. Will you give us this back acre so we can have some photo shoots and make it kind of our own?" I said, "Of course, dude, just don't get hurt. And every time I'm home, have the hot tub hot and have a cool band there playing, and we'll have good times." And, he ended up buying a house with Carey up the road, different land features in his backyard. So his track took a little longer, but for that 4, 5, 6 year period, really took over the back part of my house. And we had some great times, shot some great photos, had some great charity events for Stephen Murray and other foundations. And it was a really cool place to come back home to, because, we'd have golf tournaments and have the after party there. We'd throw some jams and have 50 of the best riders there shooting photos and video. And this was before YouTube and Instagram. I mean, Fuel TV was barely up and running. And so it was really just for the lifestyle event, not so much the content.
And when you think about crazy people, while you're always around young dudes with millions of dollars in the pro sports worlds that can just throw money around and do whatever shit they want, these gnarly dudes in the BMX and the moto worlds, I would think they're pretty crazy too, but in a totally different respect. Is there any similarities, or is it totally different?
Totally different. I mean, they didn't have coaches and structured, organizations that they answered to. And, the more press, bad or good, that they got was good for them versus, kind of having to stay straight as an arrow, in the off season and stay out of trouble. And, you don't want to be in the headlines in Boston when you're doing some dumb shit in California. So always kind of had that figure being Coach Belichick in your head when you did anything. But, those guys, they work for themselves. They're only as good as their last jump or their last photo or their last trick that they've been able to land. And so ton of respect for those guys. I was just happy to, lend them a little training ground, so to speak, for the years that I had it. And, looking back on it, it was pretty iconic in the industry at that time. And we always talk about it, all the Corey Bowens and Jerry Bagleys and Heath Pinners and Brian Deegan showed up a few times. Ronnie Feist showed up a few times. And the moto guys would come and hang out from Murrieta. And, it was just cool to just go back and experience that. But yeah, it was just one of those times in our lives that it was just fun to look back at.
It's time for my second round of sponsors, and I'm going to start things out with Outdoor Research. I've been using OR products since I moved to Seattle almost 25 years ago because they outperform everything on the market. I mean, they build their products to perform in the wet and soggy cold weather of the Pacific Northwest. And when you live where we do, you need to have the best in class. While OR has always been known for building industry-leading gear for mountaineers, skiers, and snowboarders, they've gone all in on an award-winning bike line that FreeHub describes as Outdoor Research has once again raised the bar, offering riding gear that's not just functional but also stylish and durable. That meticulous design and thoughtful engineering of the Freewheel collection have the power to transform the mountain biking experience. So high praise, and Outdoor Research is doing a lot of things on the athlete side. While they launched with an incredible team, they had the Van Steenbergen brothers, Georgia Astley, This year, they've added Casey Brown, Carson Storch, and others. And between the athletes and the events they support, while OR might be new to the bike world, they've always lived it, and there's not many brands doing what OR is doing in the world of bike. To see the new products and what the hype is all about, head on over to OutdoorResearch.com. My final sponsor is Stanley, the iconic Northwest brand that invented the category of keeping things hot and cold over 100 years ago. You remember Stanley from your grandfather's green thermos that kept his coffee hot forever when he took you out on adventures. Well, Stanley still makes that bottle and so much more. Think tumblers, water bottles, barware, camping utensils, coolers, vacuum bottles. There really is something for everyone at Stanley. And between the unique colors and the collaborations that Stanley's doing, there really is something for everyone in the Stanley line. And they're not going to gouge you with crazy prices. Stanley is the originator, and they pride themselves on providing you and me with the best products at the best value. And that value gets even better when you shop with my code. To use it, head on over to Stanley1913.com, go shopping, and buy a ton of stuff because, like I said, this code is 30% off. It's the best deal that Stanley offers. And when you check out, enter the code capital POWELL. That's Powell 2025. So no spaces in between that. Capital POWELL 2025. That's where you get your code. Thank you very much for the support, Stanley. They make the best gear in the world. You've seen them everywhere. And if you don't have one, you definitely need one. Those are my sponsors. Now let's jump back into the podcast. It's full circle, man. You were crusty demons of dirt as a kid. Then you got those dudes coming over to hang out at your compound, which is pretty sick when you get to see that whole thing happen. And then, we talked about that one coach of yours who was like all hopped up on Red Bull, and you could tell that he was all like juiced up on it, and Red Bull is the new thing. Then you become like the Red Bull guy for all of the NFL, at least for the Patriots. And then, you think about it, Red Bull's legal. And it's one of those things where our players, I'm sure, are popping Red Bulls and using it for the energy factor because everybody seems to do that. But then there's other things that are illegal in the NFL, like steroids. Obviously, they're illegal, but do people still use them? And is it kind of like every man from yourself and don't get caught?
No, not at all. I mean, it's funny. We would get tested up to 30 times a year for anything steroid related. So any performance enhancing, you'd get popped for. It was extremely hard. I mean, you go into the bathroom and they sit there and they watch you pee. So, the amount of effort it takes to beat one of those tests is much greater than just not doing it and finding other methods. So, Red Bull was a good supplement. You can't slam them every day. It's obviously not healthy for you, good, but we have coffee, the little coffee squirters literally in every coach's office, in every part of the building. So guys that sometimes they don't want coffee. They wanted something else. And it became like a little culture because we had about 10 or 15 guys that would sit by our locker. They'd grab a chair, they'd be all taped up, ready for practice. They'd crack a Red Bull and just start talking shit to each other. And it wasn't about slamming the Red Bull. It was about like that moment before, the practice battle, or that moment before the game, or that moment, before something that you just, it became this kind of
a ritual.
A little bit of a ritual.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then how about recreational drugs? You hear about NBA players always being stoned, it seems like. You hear more and more about it each day. But with the NFL, are there guys getting blazed before the games, or does that not happen in football?
Well, I mean, I'll say it like this. So we have a testing protocol that once you get tested, it's that one time. So steroids is 30 times a year. Street drugs is that one time. You don't know when it's coming. So if you don't beat it, then it's your fault. Now you're in the program and you get tested up to 10 times a month for 2 years. The next time you get popped, you're in the paper, you get a 4-game suspension. Everyone knows you lose all that money. So there's an incentive to not continuously getting, when I was playing, to not obviously get caught or continuously get caught. So, and teams know. So they say it's private, but your team knows that you're in the program or whatnot. I will say that guys knew that once, they were clean and they beat the test, then they're living life. And a lot of times it's to take away the pain, the stress of the daily competition and your job on the line every second of every moment of every day. And so, guys would use it as a little bit of relief. And, there's so many people out there just, slamming tequila and vodka and whiskey. Some of these guys would just sit home and burn one or two and play video games, and they'd be ready the next day to perform. And so there's a balance there, because you can't just act like you're on scholarship and treat it like you were in college. Because if you're not good the next day, I mean, I felt for 12 years of my career, every day I was getting cut. the next day. Like I went to bed thinking I'm losing my job every day.
That's crazy. But stuff does happen. I mean, like I heard Marshawn Lynch talk about like taking a shot of Hennessy at halftime during his games. But
He's Marshawn Lynch. Who goes out, runs for 200 yards and scores 3 touchdowns. Who's going to tell him what to do before game? Is if that's how he does it, that's how he does it. I mean, I played with Doug Flutie, who played in the 80s. He would sit next to me on the plane and he'd tell me guys were smoking cigarettes at halftime, in the locker room and just, shooting steroids in the locker room in the off season. And like, it was just crazy how it was versus how it is now. And so you get a lot of these old timers that they have the way they do things, the way they like to get taped, the stuff they like to put in their body, the shoes they like to wear and the pads and all the stuff. And it's just, that's what makes them great is these little neurotic things that they do to be at the best they can always be.
All right. And another thing that's really not supposed to be done in the NFL, I would think, because you guys are all highly paid athletes who they don't want getting hurt, but you like snowboarding. I mean, I see Tom Brady go skiing at like the Yellowstone Club with Scott Schmidt. So are you snowboarding during the season and do you have to keep that a secret from everyone?
No, it's impossible to snowboard during the season.
Oh, yeah. What am I saying?
Because there's no snow, but your body's just too banged up to go, rip down the mountains and perform the next day. So in the off seasons, that's when guys like to travel. Some guys will go, ride jet skis in the Bahamas. Some guys will go to Yellowstone and go skiing. My contract is basically says just don't get hurt doing it. So if you come back injured, now we're going to have a problem. It's not like, hey, you cannot do these 10 things. It's just anything you get injured doing off the field, you're subject to, losing your contract. So take it for what it is.
So you have to come up with a great story that's like bulletproof if you were to get hurt.
Yeah. Or not be on social media, trying to roll their windows down, taking a 20-foot jump like someone I know did and come back injured for a playoff game.
I think I know what you. Yeah. So yeah, but that was during the season, right?
Well, it was a bye to go to the playoffs, I'm assuming. So.
Yeah, but like fucking crazy, right? Like, come on, dude. Like, you don't have to go this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know who that was, but I've heard.
Yeah, I think I heard too. And then, it sounds like that guy might have gone skiing with Scott Schmidt, and he's a legend in the same respect as that guy. But thinking of snowboard legends, have you been able to go on trips with some of like your heroes?
Yeah, I mean, I've snowboarded with, while I was at GoPro, we would do these little offsite meetings. And so we'd do it up at Palisades. We'd have, a couple meetings and then we'd all go skiing. And then the next day, the same thing. And so Travis came out with us one time and a couple of the like border cross guys. I'm blanking on their names, but they're all Tahoe boys. Came out with us and
Nate
obviously
Holland and people like that.
Yeah, exactly. Nate Holland. We turned it up after hours too, me and that guy.
Oh yeah, he's a fun guy.
He's a fun dude. And then some of the skiers like Tanner Hall and Simon Dumont back in the day. So there were some guys who would come shred with us. And then I'm producing a film right now about the comeback from brain injuries. And in that film, we have Kevin Pierce, who's one of the subjects in the film. And so been able to ski with him quite a bit over the last couple of years.
Yeah. But we first met each other at one of Roy Tuscany's events. He's the guy who started the High Fives Foundation, an incredible, inspirational dude who you're good friends with. I'm good friends with. I hosted some of his events, and I saw you probably the past 2 years at his gala. And you have a long history with the High Fives Foundation. You're on the board there. And I would like to think that maybe Roy inspired you to want to work with him and do some stuff. But really, you had something, I think, that happened to a buddy of yours or something in like 2003 or around then, long before High Fives existed, that made you like really focus on spinal cord injuries. Am I talking shit or is there a story here?
No. So one of my best friends growing up was kind of in that circuit of, sponsorships and photo shoots and entering some events and stuff. So he was on the cusp. And then I went to college, played college football. He could continue to do that stuff. And I think it was 99, my senior year, that he ended up getting injured. He went to do a backflip, rotated to do like 2.5 backflips, just landed on his upper shoulders and compressed his spine at Mammoth and got airlifted to Reno Hospital. So I went up to visit him in Reno like the day after he got there just to find out. I was just me and his mom, and we found out that he was never going to walk again. So it was like, all right, so what are we going to do now? And so, a year or two go by. It's like, let's start a nonprofit to just support him in his journey. And then that progressed into, well, his journey is going to cost a lot of money because there's equipment involved. And what kind of equipment do we want to get into? All these different types of equipment are very archaic and they're expensive. So he selected a downhill mountain bike because there was a ton of dirt in Southern California and it didn't take as much money as ski lifts and all these things. So we developed a 4-wheel mountain bike for downhill mountain biking, and then started raising money to build multiple units and travel them to summer ski lifts and host like adaptive camps. And it just became overwhelming with me being the primary fundraiser and all of us having, other jobs and our other things in our lives that are taken away from, supporting it. So one of our golf tournaments in Tahoe that Paul Crandall threw for me, called Big Wheels, Little Balls, Roy Tuscany was one of the athletes in the celebrity, in the foursome. So he was the celebrity in the foursome. And he had recently got injured, and he was just so inspired by the equipment that we were doing and the events and like how people were rallying. I think it was in the early phases of how he was starting high fives. And so fast forward, I think that was in 2008 ish, 8 or 9, about 13 years later, he asked me to be on the board of trustees, and, just made a lot of sense because of obviously what I've done in the past for the adaptive sports community and how, passionate I am about it. And obviously the vehicle I have of, football and what I've done in my career.
Well, what's cool is that you're on the inspiring side to Roy, because while he inspires so many people now, probably your passion and your stoke, and he's a big Patriots guy as well, probably fired him up even more to be like, holy shit, I can do something with this after meeting you at that tournament. So that's really, really cool in what you've done with Roy. And now that you're with the High Fives Foundation, I'm going to take it back to GoPro, and thinking of that, like Paul Crandall goes from Red Bull to GoPro, and I'm going to guess that you and Paul become tight and you transition, or not transition. You go to the Broncos, and Paul's like, hey, I'm going to start sending you a shit ton of cameras, give them to your boys on the team or whatever like that. Is that how GoPro starts?
That was pretty close to how it started. Yeah. Just, I kind of saw some of these articles in Sports Illustrated coming out with POV cameras in team sports, and obviously was seeing a little bit of what my buddy Paul with this new job. And he came out to our wedding and had a GoPro. We had a bunch of fun with it. Then he came out to visit me in Colorado, and he put one on our dog and was just talking about all these cool places you could put this camera. And obviously the technology was nowhere near it is today, but I was getting it. I was like, okay, this actually could make sense in team sports if a ref wore it, or a catcher wore it to watch what the pitcher did, or the linebacker wore it to watch what the quarterback did, and just seeing kind of different perspectives, how it could be used for training and fan experience and obviously digital content. And yeah, invited them out to a game and brought a bunch of cameras, handed them to guys on the team. And then that's kind of where the relationship began. And they didn't have a job description in GoPro for team sports. They had all the other verticals, but they didn't have that one represented. And it took them a handful of months to really draft the job description. And they were pulling really hard to have me and the family move to Northern California. And we held hard to try and, stay here in we were in Colorado, but to go back towards Southern California where my parents are and, the primary, part of the industry live. And we were able to get that done. And so that was how that started.
And for you, it's like a lot of people in the NFL, when they leave the league, they have to figure out the rest of their life. And it's not going to be as exciting, and it's not going to be as inspiring. It's not going to be as anything, because the NFL is like the biggest show in the world, it seems like. But for you, it's like you were able to pivot into a gig that puts you all over the world in team sports, like at the biggest moments in team sports, and you didn't even have to play.
Yeah, I mean, it was the perfect transitional role, I would say, for someone like me who still wanted to be involved in sports and brands, and where I grew up with, and the power of the sticker and the lifestyle events and the content and the storytelling. It was just made a ton of sense. And I still had a ton of relationships in sports, and they had nowhere to really send a lot of these inbound requests for Real Madrid wants to partner. The NHL wants to partner. We should do something with Monday Night Football. We should do something with this rugby player in the UK and this cricket player in South Africa. And so now they finally had like a place to direct this internally in GoPro. We just didn't have a ton of budget. We just had my relationships and a handful of cameras to give away. And so it really started from scratch. But yeah, I didn't really have time to think about the transition. And a lot of my friends go into broadcasting, which I didn't really want to do. Some of them go into coaching, which just has a high attrition rate and divorce rate. And there's just a lot of things with those two industries that I just didn't feel comfortable doing. And so it was a good mix of what I kind of felt comfortable doing with a lot of these brands approaching me to get in front of athletes, and then the content side.
And then thinking about it, between you being a player and then you going all over with GoPro to different locker rooms, I'm sure when bottles are being popped, I'm sure you've probably been in 30 at least locker rooms where champagne's being sprayed. Would that be fair?
No, not really. I mean, they don't let you in those locker rooms, so I'd have to strategically seed the cameras to players before. You don't spray champagne in the NFL, so it's just the NBA and Major League Baseball and hockey. So my plan was always seed both teams. Who do I know on this team? Oh, the Red Sox are in it. All right, I know Shane Victor. Who do I know on the Broncos when they're playing the Seahawks? Oh, I know a couple guys there, a couple guys here. So it's really just taking a gamble of who's going to win, but then also a gamble of are they going to be able to figure out how to turn a GoPro on, have enough battery, have the lens clean of all the finger smudges, and actually use it the right way. And so we got lucky a few times, but more times than none, it would just you seed and nothing comes out of it.
All right. Well, I know GoPro didn't last forever, but it lasted a long time. Nothing lasts forever. I really don't even care how GoPro ended. What I want to know is what's life like now? Are you able to sit back and enjoy things? I guess you can't sit back because you have 4 kids and you've got to be driving everywhere to different practices.
Yeah.
But are you able to not work and just be on boards of directors and watch your kids' games and enjoy life?
No, a little bit of both. I mean, there's a constant, hustle to make more shit happen with other brands, other companies. A lot of our time is kids and sports and home life and stuff. So it's a mixture of both. I never walked away with the Tom Brady type contracts and just unlimited doors. I've pretty much knocked down a lot of the doors that I'm interested in, and it all kind of started back when I was playing, and kept a lot of contacts and relationships tight, and never burned any bridges, and I still kind of pay off today. So it's an ongoing, evolving process, but I would instruct younger players to go to the events, shake the hands, follow up with those people, because you never know what relationships are going to turn into, when you are done playing.
I mean, relationships are everything unless you have supreme athletic talent. And even if you have that, sometimes relationships really help too. So very good advice there. At this point, it's time for something that I call inappropriate questions. And this is where I get a good friend of yours to ask 3 questions, and they can be anything. I was going to get Tom Brady, but I did one better, and I was able to get one of the most positive and inspiring people that I know to ask the questions. Roy Tuscany is a great friend of both of ours. He's the founder of the High Fives Foundation. He's an incredible father, husband, auctioneer. And are you ready for question number 1 from Roy Tuscany?
I guess so.
All right, I'm going to play it for you now.
Question number 1. One of your best friends is the man, the myth that many people call the GOAT. But we need to know, what is the most inappropriate thing you and Mr. Tom Brady ever did together?
Yeah, it was pretty funny back in the day when no one really knew Tom and knew that he was the future GOAT. It was just kind of this new champ. And obviously all these football players wear helmets and you don't really know who they are if you see them on the streets. And we went out to South Beach one time, and we were at this club, and obviously there's girls, guys, everyone. And so we had some friends at a different place. So we were like, all right, let's leave this place. Let's go to this next spot. And we had rode scooters to the club. So we valeted our little Miami scooters, me, Tom, and Ty Law. And so we were getting ready to leave, and, we're taking a couple chicks with us. And so I put one on the back of my scooter, Ty puts one on the back of his scooter, and the one that wants to jump on with Tom was about the size of me. And so he's like, I'll just take a cab. And so he left his scooter there and took a cab, and we went to the next spot, met up with some friends, but it was pretty funny.
Oh, that is good. All right, let's go to question number 2 from Roy. Here we go.
All right, Lonnie, you are a dad of 4. 2 of those kids are twins. What is the worst diaper blowout you ever had to deal with?
That's so funny. These are inappropriate questions.
Yeah, they could be worse. You're lucky.
We had a good blowout one time. Actually, my number 3 kid, crying. All of a sudden, he's sitting there laughing, and we opened up his onesie, and it was full of poo from the foot all the way up to his armpits. And I had the picture of him, is just him smiling at us like, yes, it's time to get cleaned.
Oh, man. So a big number 2 for number 3. We'll go into your final inappropriate question.
All right. It is code of conduct question. They say you're never supposed to have relations with a cheerleader. You're married to one. How did you break that code of conduct and propose to your lady?
We met at a place called Outlaw Barbecue which was a little biker bar next to the stadium. Traffic was always a nightmare getting out of Gillette, so we found this little barbecue biker place next door, know the owners, and we'd backdoor all the traffic and we'd go there and just rip it up after victories. And one night she came in and she had a friend who was a Jaeger girl there. And so, we're typically in this biker bar singing and punching holes in the ceiling, and there's never any good looking chicks in there. And she came in and, the story goes that I sent her a couple Jaeger shots and she didn't do either of them. I did both of them and rode off into the sunset. I proposed in Laguna Beach. I was extremely scared that day. I had a plan to do it months later. I bought the ring and I stuffed it in my drawer. And within 4 or 5 days, I just had to do it because I could not hold the secret. So called her dad and made it happen on the beach in Laguna.
All right. Well, that is a great story. That is Inappropriate Questions. And that's our podcast. And this one's a big treat because I'm a big football fan. I'm a big fan of snow and I'm a big fan of good people. You hit all three of those for me. And it's been cool to meet you at High Fives events over the years. I've put on your Super Bowl ring. I could put like 2 fingers through one, which is pretty crazy because you're on the smaller side of NFL linemen. But I can imagine people are like tower over you there. But either way, it's cool to see that you didn't come up with like a blue chip career that was going to take you place to place to place, but you hustled, you made it happen every step along the way. And you have that skill of being able to throw a ball between your legs better than anybody else out there. And that's what took you to the NFL. It took you there for 12 years, 3 Super Bowls, 4 Super Bowls, but we'll only think about 3 because you won 3 of them. It's a cool story. And I thank you for telling it. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. That was fun. Appreciate it.
So that was time with Lonie Paxton. And if you're one of those skiers that likes to hang out in a snowboarder's blind spot, well, that's a bad idea. And you don't want to do that with Lonie Paxton because while he's a super nice, cause-focused guy, he's also one of the biggest guys on the mountain, and he will unintentionally flatten you. All kidding aside, what's cool about Lonie is he's not just a Super Bowl champion. He's that Swiss Army knife kind of guy that he talked about in the podcast where he can do everything. He can hang with the dirtbags. He can hang with the jocks. He can party with the boys. He can do the charity work. He has a huge family. He does so many different things, and he's got to be so busy, but he does it all with a smile on his face. And like this podcast, he does it all with a yes. If someone's asking him to do something, if he thinks it's a good idea, 100% he's going to be in. And he was very accommodating with me here. And he's got to be a very busy guy with all that stuff going on. And thinking about it, I mean, I've had a really busy past couple of years, but that's over for me. Lonie will get no rest for a long time, and I bet you he loves that. I guess his busyness is a better busyness than mine was, and that's good for Lonie. I would say another thing for Lonie is when you have 4 kids and you're an NFL player, you would think your body gets beat up and destroyed, but he was a long snapper, so while he didn't make that left tackle money, he didn't get destroyed like a left tackle either, and I think he mentioned a knee injury or something like that, but hopefully he can play with those 4 kids and have a lot more healthy lifestyle than a lot of those other dudes who are in car accidents 200 times a football game, because that is a tough thing, but that's why they make the big bucks. And that is the podcast. And I want to thank each of you for listening. I want to thank you all for telling a friend about the show, reviewing me wherever you listen, and most importantly, listening to the ads and buying from my incredible sponsors, because I only work with the best. And the best are Elan Skis, Stanley, Best Day Brewing, Outdoor Research, and Liquid Force. Have a great week, everyone.